In a shocking turn of events, a leaked video capturing Rick Harrison's emotional and intense reaction after receiving a life sentence has gone viral, leaving fans and critics alike stunned. The video, believed to have been recorded immediately after the sentencing, shows the Pawn Stars star collapsing in the courtroom, clearly devastated by the ruling. As millions flocked to social media to witness the raw, unedited moment, the video has sparked a major wave of controversy. Is this a genuine emotion or a carefully crafted performance aimed at winning public sympathy? The video quickly became a hot topic, sparking both empathy and skepticism as the online community tried to decode the true message behind the actions of this once beloved man. If you find the story in this video meaningful and want to inspire others, don't forget to leave a comment with the number 1 if you sympathize with Rick Harrison, having witnessed or related to this emotional journey, or with the number 0 if you have a different opinion. Like and share so your friends can follow this story too. The image of Rick Harrison before he collapsed. Rick Harrison was never your typical TV star. He didn't come from the entertainment industry, never received any acting training, and didn't have image consultants shaping his persona. Rick's public image wasn't crafted in a studio. It was built over time through the twists and turns of his real-life journey, a path marked by challenges, resilience, and unexpected opportunities. Born in 1965 in Lexington, North Carolina, Rick faced one of the most isolating and psychologically damaging conditions a child could endure: epilepsy. Uncontrolled seizures, the stigma from classmates, and the fear of never living a normal life left deep emotional scars. But instead of breaking him, it forged his determination. His illness didn't crush his spirit, it drove him to rise above it. Eventually, his family moved to Las Vegas, a city that was both harsh and dazzling. Along with his father, Richard Oldman Harrison, Rick opened the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in 1989. Starting with limited capital, their goal was not just to survive, but to change the perception of the pawn business, an industry often associated with scams and exploitation. Rick helped transform the shop into a place with historical depth, where every item told a story and every transaction became a cultural exchange. He made his breakthrough on television in 2009 when the History Channel aired a reality show about their store. No one could have predicted how it would explode in popularity. The Pawn Stars were not just buying and selling items. It was a smart blend of history, culture, family, humor, and sharp business skills. Rick was the leader, someone who could identify a rare Edo-era katana sword, assess the authenticity of Roman coins, and make quick, wise business decisions without a script. To the public, Rick became the embodiment of practical intelligence. He wasn't flashy or boastful, but approachable and witty. His signature bargaining style, combined with a sarcastic sense of humor, became his trademark. His firm handshake, sincere advice, and strong bond with his father, business partner, and mentor painted a picture of a man who was both tough and genuine. This authenticity made viewers trust Rick almost unconditionally. Pawn Stars was not about drama or scandal like most reality TV shows. It was slow-paced, profound, and emotionally grounded. That's why the shock didn't just stem from the severity of the allegations when news of Rick's investigation and life sentence broke. It came from the profound emotional betrayal. People couldn't believe Rick had done wrong because, for over a decade, They had trusted an image that seemed real. So, when Rick broke down in tears and screamed that he was being set up, many chose to believe him immediately because deep down, they felt Rick couldn't be a criminal. But was that belief based on truth, or had faith clouded our judgment? The beginning of his downfall started with something as seemingly harmless as a tax audit, which then escalated into a federal indictment. No one could have predicted that Rick Harrison's collapse wouldn't begin with a catastrophic fall, but with something that appeared to be innocent. A routine tax audit in 2018 for a business that had been operating for nearly 3 decades and attracted millions of tourists every year was featured on national television. Audits were expected, but this time, IRS inspectors discovered more than just a few irregularities in the books. They found traces of a complex financial network, suspicious transactions, and unexplained cash flows. What began as a standard IRS audit quickly expanded to involve the FBI, the Civil Enforcement Bureau, and the Department of Justice. Within just a few months, the audit had turned into a full-fledged federal criminal investigation. The focus shifted from Harrison Enterprises, Inc. and the owner of the gold and silver pawn shop, with accusations of money laundering, trafficking in illegal artifacts, and ultimately being linked to a global antiquities smuggling ring. According to prosecutors, Rick Harrison was suspected of being part of a financial system designed to launder money from the sale of artifacts with unverifiable origins. These items ranged from ancient Greek coins, Egyptian statues, and 17th century European paintings to relics from indigenous cultures. Many items had been funneled into the shop through intermediaries. Some were traced back to stolen museum collections or illegal archaeological sites. What elevated the case to national and international significance was not only the nature of the items, but also the global scope of the network. According to the indictment, the transactions crossed borders, involving shell companies based in Malta, Panama, and Switzerland. The network was allegedly connected to wealthy collectors and organized crime groups operating in the shadows of the cultural and financial sectors. Authorities seized numerous internal assets, including encrypted emails, bank data, and testimony from former employees, pointing to a large sum of cash being funneled into the system through the purchase of artifacts and their resale to international buyers. Rick was accused of orchestrating or willfully allowing this system to operate within his shop. Rick's initial response was to deny the allegations. He refused media interviews, offering only a brief statement through his lawyer. "We operate transparently, legally, and in accordance with industry regulations." However, his silence only deepened public skepticism. While fans of Pawn Stars clung to Rick's sharp, humorous, and moral image, the media began to paint an entirely different portrait. Rick was not just the heir to a pawn shop empire, he was portrayed as a cultural manipulator, a machine built to profit. Public opinion became divided. On one side were those who believed Rick was a man of the people, a victim of a system targeting him for being too famous and too successful. On the other side were those who saw him as a shrewd businessman, one who knew the rules, exploited every loophole, and was willing to dance on the gray line between legality and ethics. Under mounting pressure, the FBI raided the gold and silver pawn shop in early 2019. The cameras that once captured multi-million-dollar transactions now showed agents seizing documents, computers, artifacts, and stacks of cash from a back room. The footage ripped away the seemingly pristine facade of the show, once hailed as one of the cleanest reality TV programs in America. When the indictment was finally made public, the shock hit even harder. Tax evasion, money laundering through foreign entities, trafficking in stolen cultural property, using foreign bank accounts to conceal profits, and connections to internationally investigated organizations. Each charge carried the potential for sentencing ranging from 10 to 25 years. Taken together, they painted a future where Rick might never be free again. Legal analysts weighed in. Some argued that the case had been politicized, that Rick had been turned into a scapegoat to send a message to those profiting from cultural exploitation. Others believed it was the inevitable consequence of unchecked financial and media power running too long. Rick remained silent. Sources close to him revealed that he had been devastated, suffering from insomnia, and feeling deeply betrayed. However, he was also said to be preparing a counterattack, not through legal moves but through something far more personal: his voice, his emotions, his humanity. He believed that this could awaken the public to what he called a fabricated case, and he did so in a historic moment in court, where he was not only sentenced, but also forced the world to listen to the final cry of a man once hailed as a national icon. But to understand what truly transpired in that fateful moment, we must turn to the next chapter as Rick faced his life sentence, the fateful trial. On the morning of the sentencing, the federal courtroom in Nevada was packed. A tense atmosphere hung in the air like thick fog. Reporters lined up outside the courthouse. Fans gathered with banners supporting Rick Harrison, while protesters stood silently, clutching the indictment like a reminder of the truth. Inside, Rick sat at the defense table, his eyes sunken from exhaustion, yet his posture remained upright. After nearly 2 years of investigation and 6 months of testimony, he was about to hear the final verdict, a decision that would completely alter the rest of his life. The proceedings in the final days of the trial went beyond technical legal arguments. All the charges were contested: the ambiguous financial transactions, the recovered physical evidence, and the testimony of former employees. Now, the focus had shifted to the man himself. What would Rick Harrison say, and more importantly, what would he convince the court to believe? Rick's attorney, a seasoned lawyer with over 20 years of experience in high-profile criminal cases, presented a surprising strategy. Rather than attempting to disprove the evidence, the defense focused on Rick's moral character and humanitarian legacy. The lawyer argued that Rick was a hard-working individual who had been inadvertently drawn into shady dealings that he was not fully aware of. He was not a mastermind, but a pawn manipulated by a larger cultural financial system being dissected layer by layer. Rick was a son, a father, a television icon, and a good citizen. The alleged wrongdoings were not deserving of a life sentence, the lawyer told the jury. However, the climax did not come from the defense counsel but from Rick Harrison himself. After being allowed to speak one last time before sentencing, he stood up, holding a crumpled piece of paper, and looked the judge in the eye. In the suffocating silence, he began in a steady voice, "I am not here to beg for mercy. I am here to speak the truth, whether it saves me or not." The entire courtroom fell silent. "I have been set up," Rick continued, his voice trembling but unwavering. "This is a conspiracy, not because I committed a crime, but because I was too successful, too visible, and refused to bow to the dark demands behind this industry." He paused, glancing around the room. his eyes lingering on his family. His wife's red-rimmed eyes gave a subtle nod. His son, Corey, held his hand firmly, yet there was helplessness in his gaze. Rick turned back to look at the judge. "I built a legacy with my own hands." "I have inspired millions to believe that history is not just confined to books, but is within our reach. On a coin, an old gun, an ancient map, and now they call me a criminal." His voice began to tremble. "They didn't charge me for the things I sold. They're prosecuting me because I refused to bow down. I refused to sell the rights to the show. I refused to become the face of products I believed were unethical." Then suddenly, every door slammed shut. "The transactions I believed were legal are now seen as criminal. I became a symbol of greed when the truth is, I was protecting what I built." Rick fell silent. No one spoke. The tension in the courtroom reached its peak. He stared at the judge, not blinking. "If today I must receive a life sentence with no chance of parole, let me say one last thing. I do not regret living honestly. I do not regret refusing to be manipulated. I only regret not being prepared for a world where truth holds no value." Then Rick lowered his head. According to a reporter from The Guardian on the scene, that moment was a blend of Shakespearean drama and modern tragedy. A public figure who did not collapse but screamed in despair, using every last bit of emotion to defend himself. After his speech, the judge left the bench for a few minutes before returning. The sentence was handed down: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The reasoning was persistent violations causing significant damage and not enough evidence to prove that Rick was completely uninvolved. The cameras focused on Rick, but he did not cry. He stood tall, adjusted his suit jacket, and embraced his son. Without saying a word, only a defiant look in his eyes. The media immediately spread the video of Rick's statement. Within 48 hours, it had garnered over 50 million views across platforms. From Twitter to TikTok, from Reddit to legal forums, heated debates erupted. Did Rick speak the truth? Or was this his final move, leveraging emotion to sway public opinion and spark doubt? Media experts weighed in. Some analyzed Rick's body language, his unflinching eye contact, a trembling voice that was nonetheless steady, and the tight grip of someone carefully controlling their emotions. Others noted that his repeated use of keywords like conspiracy and legacy was a linguistic strategy designed to evoke empathy from the audience and shift the focus away from the legal evidence. Whether true or not, Rick had achieved one thing. He sparked a nationwide debate. No one was talking about the items seized from his store anymore. No one mentioned the offshore entities. What dominated the conversation was emotion, the tears, the declaration, "I don't regret living honestly." And it was at that moment that conspiracy theories began to take root, nurtured by doubt and the fear that justice could be manipulated by unseen forces. The conspiracy theories about Rick being the victim of something larger spread quickly. As the clip of Rick Harrison choking up and declaring, "I was set up," went viral across social media platforms, a slew of conspiracy theories emerged from the shadows. Conspiracy theories have long been a byproduct of high-profile cases, but now they became the main topic of public discussion. And in Rick Harrison's statement, they weren't baseless rumors. On the contrary, they were based on fragmented details that, though seemingly unrelated, were pieced together in a chillingly convincing way. The first and most widely circulated theory was that Rick had refused to sell the rights to Pawn Stars to a major media conglomerate, making him the target of a campaign to erase his image. The story began around 2021, when producers sought to reposition the show for deeper commercialization. The theory expanded to suggest that the show was aiming to enter Asian markets, licensing Rick's image for collectible merchandise and embedding more prominent product placements in episodes. According to an insider who had worked with the production team, Rick strongly opposed this. He believed the show needed to maintain its authenticity and not become a soulless cash machine. Soon after, conspiracy theorists claimed Rick found himself under intense scrutiny over taxes. Former allies in the industry turned their backs on him. The media began questioning the transparency of his business dealings. None of this, they argued, was coincidental. The second, much darker hypothesis suggests that Rick refused to get involved in a global antiquity smuggling network. According to an individual on Reddit who claims to be an insider in the international collecting community, Rick was approached by brokers offering artifacts from the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and North Africa, regions rich in antiquities but rife with legal risks. The goal was to use Rick's reputation and his store as a front to launder these suspiciously sourced items. Rick, known for his deep knowledge of history and antiquities law, is said to have turned down the offer. From that point on, he became a liability, a dangerous man who knew too much. Removing him would require a more sophisticated approach than outright violence. The law and the media would be used to silence him. The question is whether these theories hold any weight. In reality, Rick Harrison has openly condemned the commercialization of reality television. In a 2019 interview, he stated, "I didn't do this show to become a superstar. I did it to educate." If I can make a 15-year-old interested in history because they hear me talk about a samurai sword, then for me, that's a success. Those words were once praised. However, today, they are often reinterpreted as evidence of his resistance against the very forces profiting from television. For the Antiquities Network, it's undeniable that the world of collecting contains a vast gray area. According to UNESCO, in just 2012, the global illegal antiquities market exceeded $10 billion. Seemingly harmless items, a ceramic vase, an ancient manuscript, a tribal mask, could trace their origins to grave robbing, looting, or even terrorism funding. As a professional appraiser, Rick surely finds himself at the heart of that storm. But what is most astounding and crucial to the third conspiracy theory is that Rick also knows a great deal about secret transactions in Las Vegas and has been legally silenced. Antiquities speculators often maintain close relationships with brokers of economic power. From casinos and jewelry dealers to financial institutions appraising hard-to-liquidate assets, Rick conducts hundreds of transactions each year, maintaining a vast repository of information on the valuation of items, ownership, and provenance. Conspiracy theorists believe he may have discovered or even possess evidence of secret money laundering schemes, disguised as antiquities sales. And if he refuses to look the other way, the cleanest way to neutralize him is through the legal system. A leaked story about Rick Harrison's outrageous reaction is going viral on social media. If you're shocked too, hit like, share it immediately, and help spread the truth before it gets erased. Every like is a voice. Every share is a step toward uncovering the mystery. So, why do these theories resonate so strongly? First, because the public wants to believe in Rick's innocence. The idea that a beloved public figure, once a symbol of wholesome family television, could commit a crime causes psychological resistance. Faith is threatened. Rather than accepting the harsh reality that good people can also commit wrongdoings, the audience opts for a more comfortable escape. Rick is the victim. This narrative allows them to maintain their idealized image and avoid the sting of betrayal. Rick himself has, in a way, leveraged these conspiracy theories as part of a media strategy. In his court speech, he not only claimed his innocence, but also sowed doubt by invoking the media forces that wanted to destroy him and his refusal to bow down. These words struck a chord with an audience already accustomed to fabricated stories backed by shadowy state forces. And the real loser, despite the evidence, was Rick. As a master of media, he knew exactly which keywords to use to both legally defend himself and stir public empathy. However, some experts warn that the power of conspiracy theories lies in the fact that they don't require proof. They only need doubt, and that can be very dangerous. When someone is judged by a legitimate court but the public chooses to believe in unproven theories, we enter an era where emotions outweigh the law. It's a place where personal belief takes precedence over objective truth. This isn't about affirming Rick's guilt. Rather, it emphasizes the need to distinguish empathy from truth. If Rick is truly being set up, it must be proven with legal evidence, not just a trembling voice and desperate eyes. Otherwise, society will become increasingly driven by emotion, and justice will be swayed by the latest trends. In conclusion, the conspiracy theories surrounding Rick Harrison not only reflect the complexity of the case, but also highlight a broader societal issue. Public trust is wavering, no longer firmly anchored in legal institutions, but instead drifting toward emotions, speculation, and alternate truths. Whether guilty or not, Rick has become a symbol of an era where justice and media no longer travel the same path. Will Rick Harrison's family stand behind him in the face of his downfall, or will they push forward? If the courtroom is where guilt is judged, then behind closed doors, family is where emotional collapse is measured. When Rick Harrison was sentenced to life in prison, the front row of the public courtroom was not filled with journalists. Instead, it was occupied by his wife, children, and close family members. They didn't speak out, hold up banners, or engage in the media frenzy. But their silence raised a bigger question. Where was Rick's family during his downfall? His son, Corey Big Hose Harrison, his longtime friend and co-star from Pawn Stars, became the center of public attention after the verdict. Corey grew up in the pawn shop, watching his father turn it into a television icon. He was seen as the natural heir to that legacy, both in terms of the brand and public image. However, in the days following Rick's sentencing, Corey disappeared from the public eye. There were no statements, no appearances, no posts. Some speculated that this silence was a sign of internal collapse, suggesting that Corey was distancing himself to salvage his own reputation and protect what was left of the business. But sources close to the family revealed the opposite, that Corey's silence was not cowardice, but pain. He still believed his father was a good man, but the evidence was too compelling to ignore. Corey found himself trapped between two forces: loyalty to his family and his public responsibility to employees, partners, and the traditional brand. Rick's wife, who had stood by him through the years following his pornographic film career, only spoke to the media once after the trial. Her statement was brief. "I believe Rick is a good man, but even good men can go astray." That quote was widely cited as a painfully honest emotional response. She stood by Rick spiritually, but wasn't blind to the reality. She didn't defend him at all costs, nor did she dismiss him as a fallen criminal. It was the voice of a woman who had shared her life with a man whose public image had grown too large and was now collapsing under its own weight. Other members of the Harrison team, particularly Chumlee and others who appeared on the show, also stepped away from the spotlight. People began to wonder whether they were quietly preparing for a post-Rick era or simply waiting for the chaos to settle before deciding on their next move. Beyond the emotional burden on the family, a larger issue emerged: the future of the gold and silver pawn shop. For decades, it had become more than just a business. It was a cultural landmark in Las Vegas. Tourists didn't just come to buy and sell, they came to meet Rick, take pictures with Corey, and experience the world of porn stars in real life. Now, with Rick convicted and his reputation shattered, can the shop continue as it once did? Industry experts are skeptical. They warn that if the shop doesn't quickly rebrand, it could disappear from the Las Vegas tourist map within 1 to 2 years. A vibrant shop so deeply tied to the public image of one man must either reinvent itself or accept its demise. But the bigger question is, who will lead that reinvention? Corey could, but is he willing? And more importantly, does he have the strength to step out of the shadow of a father who was both a legend and a convicted man? The answer remains unclear, but one thing is certain. The Harrison family is at a crossroads. Every decision they make will shape not only their own future, but also how the world remembers them, whether as those who stood up and continued a legacy or as those who crumbled under its weight. In the 6 trials by public opinion, with tears that may or may not be real, no one can deny the tsunami of public reaction following Rick Harrison's emotional statement in court. But what's notable is that this reaction didn't stop at fleeting empathy. It divided public opinion into 2 camps, one that hails Rick as a victim of malevolent forces, and the other accusing him of manipulating emotions to avoid accountability. Across social media, hashtags appeared like political slogans. Justice for Rick, Rick was framed, Ash be free, Rick Harrison. Millions of people shared videos of Rick tearfully choking up as he delivered his final words before sentencing. Pages that once shared lighthearted clips from adult film stars transformed into legal support channels, posting case analyses, citing laws, and questioning the alleged conspiracy behind Rick's life sentence. Heated debates soon erupted everywhere. Mainstream media, especially networks like CNN, Fox News, and NBC, began analyzing Rick's reaction through a technical lens. Body language, rhetorical strategy, and emotional manipulation tactics were all under scrutiny. Some television analysts argued that Rick's performance wasn't entirely spontaneous, but rather could have been scripted and meticulously calculated. Created with a deep understanding of how to influence the American psyche, they identified 3 distinct layers of language in Rick's speech: personal language, I am a father, a worker, an inspiration; justice language, I was set up, I haven't been tried; and symbolic language, I represent the American dream. I am proof of honest success. This framework made Rick's speech not only emotionally powerful, but also tactically resonant, tapping into the broader American belief that the system often punishes those who refuse to play by its rules. However, it also sparked doubt on academic forums, personal blogs, and editorial columns. Many began to label Rick's emotional display as a form of powerful performance, a calculated vulnerability designed to win back public support. They pointed to the tears, the trembling voice, and the pained expressions, tactics famously used by high-profile defendants, from politicians to CEOs, to reclaim control of the narrative in the courtroom. This raises an important question. Can emotions influence legal judgments in an ideal society? The courtroom, not social media, should determine guilt or innocence. But in the digital age, public verdicts are often delivered ahead of and louder than any legal judgment. With millions watching, commenting, and resharing daily, Rick's case has transcended a legal trial. It's become an emotional referendum, where each person is forced to pick a side, believe in Rick's tears, or trust in the evidence of the FBI. This leads to a painful question. Which tears are real? If Rick is truly innocent, his conviction would not only be a legal mistake, but also a moral failure of the system and society. But if he is guilty, then his tears become a masterclass in manipulation, setting a dangerous precedent where emotional appeals could distort justice. The problem worsens when the media stops acting as neutral observers and begins to take sides. Even the most reputable news platforms get caught in the emotional wave chasing views and shares, twisting headlines and editing Rick's words to fit the political angle or bias of their audience. This chaos of information has created a dangerous ripple effect. Public opinion has become fragmented. Truth has been stretched into multiple versions. And in such a world, even a legal trial supported by clear evidence can be dismissed as staged, influenced, or unreliable. Rick Harrison's case has exposed this reality. No one can say with certainty that he is completely innocent, but no one dares to claim he is unquestionably guilty. In the gray space between truth and emotion, doubt grows, conspiracy thrives, and society's trust in justice begins to falter. As a media psychologist observed, Rick wasn't just crying in court. He cried before a culture in crisis, a culture that no longer knows whom to trust. The adult film stars and the consequences of reality television. When Rick Harrison shouted, "I was set up," standing in court, it wasn't just the fall of one man. It was a shock wave that rattled the very foundation of the entire reality TV industry. Rick wasn't just a player in the game. He was one of the people who helped make reality television a cultural phenomenon. And that's why his downfall caused a ripple effect throughout an industry that turned everyday life into global entertainment. When Porn Stars premiered in 2009, it redefined reality television. There were no manufactured dramatics, no promotional gimmicks, no over-the-top theatrics, just authentic transactions, unscripted in a pawn shop where knowledge, integrity, and natural humor formed the foundation. Rick Harrison and his son weren't actors. They were themselves. And audiences loved the show precisely because of its raw authenticity amidst a sea of scripted performances. That authenticity turned adult film stars into a global brand. It sparked a wave of educational entertainment where fun and learning coexisted. Millions of Americans learned about world history through a clay vase or a 19th century revolver brought into the pawn shop. Rick didn't just appraise items, he connected viewers to history, culture, and human values. But when Rick was convicted, the entire structure of the show was called into question. The first obvious question: can the porn stars exist without Rick? In theory, the show could be restructured around supporting characters like Corey or Chumlee. But fundamentally, porn stars cannot be separated from Rick, the decision-maker, the guide, and the heart of every episode. Rick is the symbol. And when that symbol was sentenced to life in prison, the show lost more than just its star. It lost the ethical foundation it had built over 14 years. Before the trial, Porn Stars was considered one of the cleanest brands in reality television. No scandals, no violence, no harmful content. But now, with the ethical core of Porn Stars stripped away by the justice system, that image has been shattered. Producers in the industry began to rethink how they portray reality on screen. Because the uncomfortable truth is that even when a show seems real, it is still a product of editing, scripting, and narrative design. Rick Harrison wasn't just part of the process. He helped shape his own image. And now, as the trial has exposed the darker corners of his business and personal life, the public faces a crucial question. Are we watching reality, or a polished version made to feel real enough? Rick's case also exposes a deeper tension within the industry. What is the ethical line in reality television when someone becomes not just a character, but a commercial product and a public icon? Do they still own their own lives, or when the system profits millions from their reality, what responsibility does that system bear when they collapse? After Rick's conviction, many producers became concerned about the idea of brands being judged through their representatives, especially for shows built around strong personalities. Rick's downfall not only caused the adult stars to lose their leader, but also led to a loss of trust among the audience. The trust that the show was based on genuinely straightforward people. This raised a deeper question. Does reality television create an ideal that is too pristine to maintain when shows demand their stars to be more real than real life, and viewers expect moral perfection from flawed individuals? Any downfall then becomes a disaster. Rick may be guilty, or he could be the first victim of a machine that elevated him too quickly with expectations that were too high. The consequences of Rick Harrison's case go beyond just the porn stars. It forces the entire reality TV industry to confront the true meaning of reality. How much is authentic, how much is staged, and more importantly, when a real person is pulled into the entertainment machine, who is responsible when everything falls apart? Rick Harrison was once a model of ethical reality TV. Now, as that model is shattered, what is lost is not just a beloved character, but the belief that reality TV can be truthful, wholesome, and sustainable. When the door to the courtroom closed and Rick Harrison was led away under the watchful eyes and camera lenses of hundreds, an important chapter in American television quietly came to an end. But at the same time, a new, more complicated, and bitter chapter began to unfold. It was no longer the story of a porn shop owner turned TV star. Now, it was the story of a man carrying both fame and darkness, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The case of Rick Harrison offers a larger lesson, not just about an individual, but about the entire system. Society's trust is more fragile than we think. The media can lift someone to great heights and just as quickly bring them down. The audience is not just an observer, but the largest jury with the power to decide whether or not to forgive. And above all, this case forces us to confront the most uncomfortable question of our time, an era where the line between truth and illusion has become increasingly blurred. Can we still differentiate between the real person and the image crafted to please us? Rick Harrison may have lost everything, his freedom, his fame, his reputation, but he leaves behind something indelible, a complex, controversial, and unforgettable symbol. And as time passes and public opinion cools, his story may persist, not for the sake of the truth itself, but because of our deep, relentless need to uncover it. And then, in the middle of the tense trial, Rick Harrison stood up abruptly, his gaze scorching the entire room, his voice resonating with intensity. "You don't know what you've just done." That was the moment everything exploded. The cameras were covered, the recordings edited, but that story still managed to leak out. And now, it's spreading like an uncontrollable fire. This is no longer fiction. This is the first piece of a much larger truth. And it's you, the one reading these words, who has the chance to spread it. Share this story, hit like if you feel the truth is being hidden, and leave a comment. I've seen, I believe, and I will not stay silent. Truth does not survive on its own. It needs you. And I'll see you in the next videos.